Hey boys and girls, we are going to be continuing with our story, Who Was Ferdinand Magellan? Now let's remember some of the things we have already read about Ferdinand. Remember, he had a dream to be an explorer, and it took a long time for that dream to come true. I know a lot of you guys remember when he went to the King of Spain, and he went to kiss the king's hand. The king was mean and pulled his hand away, and Ferdinand nearly fell, and he was just laughed at for having a dream. Also that he was stabbed and now he walks with a limp. So last we read, they had gotten stuck in the doldrums. So let's look at our globe. We were right here from Spain. They went down the coast of Africa, and then they went across here over, and they got stuck in the middle. I don't know if you remember what that was called. It was the doldrums. And they sat there for 21 days, and they thought, we're never going to get out of here. And then the wind picked up, and they made it over to South America. Of course, they didn't call it South America yet. But this is where they met the people there that had the hammocks. We colored that in our explorer's book. I'll show you a picture to remind you. So they kind of felt like they were on a vacation, enjoying the people that lived in Brazil at the time. So we're going to continue on. One word I want to go over really quickly is the word straight. And this word is not like I walk in a straight line. This word is going to refer to a narrow body of water. So think of, almost like a river, but probably larger. A narrow body of water that connects two larger bodies of water. So we are going to be talking about how Ferdinand wanted to get all the way down here to cross this narrow strip of land. Hopefully this is showing up okay and the reflections are okay. So they're going to travel down South America, and he's looking for this narrow passageway right here. Okay, let's read on. So our next chapter is called Frozen In. At first it seemed easy. On January 11th, 1520, Ferdinand spotted a wide opening in the coast. Was this the strait already? His confidence soared. But the opening was just a huge river in what we now call Uruguay. Cannibals were living there. The crewmen were afraid. Talk of mutiny began again. You remember mutiny? When they rise up and they take over Ferdinand? Mutiny. So the talk of mutiny began again. The Spanish captains whispered that Ferdinand didn't know where El Paso was. Best to sail east now, the old way to the Moluccas. Ferdinand was furious. He wasn't about to give up the search. True, the strait was hard to find. The strait, remember this? The narrow body of water he's looking for. True, the strait was hard to find, but God would help him locate it. He declared it lay just a little farther south. Then he prayed silently that it was true. On they sailed. The Trinidad, the Victoria, the Conception, the Santiago, and the San Antonio. No European people had ever been this way before. February came, and a hint of winter cooled the warm air. In South America, winters last from April to September. Then farther south, the weather became unusually cold. This wasn't just winter. They were approaching a frozen land. I wonder where they are going. Under a gray sky, icebergs jutted out of the water. Huge waves flung the 5 ships around, and below deck, leaks sprung everywhere. A bitter wind tore sails and sometimes blew the ships backwards. It was impossible to cook. The fires on deck went out all the time. Hail and sleet, and then snow froze the men's clothes to their bodies. Like the sails and rigging, their hair and beards were coated with ice. Look at this strange land. Do you see something in this picture? What do you see? I think I see some penguins. I wonder where they are now. All right, let's keep reading. By March, they sailed 1,000 awful miles. Today we know the ships were near Antarctica, but back then no one had heard of such a place. The crew began to believe the captain general was crazy. El Paso was a fairy tale. It didn't exist. So that El Paso is he's looking for that strait, that narrow body of water. But Ferdinand could think of nothing but the strait. He had to find it. No amount of protest from the men could convince him to turn back. To show his determination, he joined them on deck, working harder than anyone, steering the ship himself. For weeks, he got just 2 hours of sleep at night. He never changed his clothes. 600 miles later, there was still no strait. Ferdinand realized the ships would have to wait out the winter in a safe harbor. On March 31st, the ships rode 30-foot waves into Port San Julian, a gray and rocky bay in what we now call Argentina. So Ferdinand Magellan is now in Antarctica. There were no people on its shores, only pudgy black and white birds that couldn't fly. We know what those are. Dark, sleek animals played in the water. Today we know they were penguins and seals. But Ferdinand and his men had never seen creatures like them before. The bay sheltered the ships from the wind and the waves. Still, the crew was uneasy. Where were they? They wanted to go home. Once again, the Spanish captains tried to mutiny. At midnight on April Fool's Day, 30 armed men seized the San Antonio. The Victoria fell next, and then the Conception. Sailors loyal to Ferdinand were put in irons. It seemed as if the Captain General had finally lost his command. Oh, poor Ferdinand. He just wants to get around the globe, right? He wants to circumnavigate, and people are trying to get in his way. All right, let's keep reading. But Ferdinand still had his Trinidad and the loyal Santiago. Quick-witted and crafty, he came up with a plan. As the sun set and fog drifted in, 6 men rowed to the Victoria. All right, I'm going to show you this picture. So here are the men. They're rowing to the Victoria. Hopefully these pictures are turning out okay. And you can see. All right. So they carried, let's go back. As the sun set and fog drifted in, 6 men rowed to the Victoria. They carried a letter for its rebel captain, saying that Ferdinand was ready to make a deal. As the 6 boarded the ship, 16 others snuck onto Victoria. When the captain laughed off the letter, one of Ferdinand's men grabbed him and stabbed him to death. As the rebel captain's body was hung up for all to see, the crew of the Victoria surrendered. The ship was Ferdinand's once more. The Victoria joined with Ferdinand's 2 ships to block the exit to the harbor. The San Antonio and the Conception were trapped. There was no way out. Ferdinand had outwitted the Spanish captains. The mutiny was over. But Ferdinand wasn't finished. He wanted each sailor to know that disobedience meant death. So he had the Victoria's dead captain. I'm going to use a different word. So he had the Victoria's dead captain shown to everyone. The Conception's captain met the same fate. Then 45 mutineers were chained to one another by the ankles. For the rest of the winter, they were forced to do the hardest, dirtiest jobs. Juan de Cartagina's sentence was far worse. Ferdinand declared that he would be left behind in the icy wasteland. They were going to leave him there. Look, here he is. The ships are sailing off when it got warm, and they left him there. Man, don't mutiny against Ferdinand Magellan. He's serious. All right, now Ferdinand and the crew got ready for winter. They hunted seals and wrapped themselves in the skins for warmth. In the few hours of daylight, they built huts and collected firewood. Ferdinand also had the men empty the ships so repairs could be made. They needed to be in top shape when the search for El Paso resumed. That's when Ferdinand made a terrible discovery. Half his food and supplies were missing. They had been taken off the ships even before Ferdinand's expedition had left Spain. So, before they ever left on their voyage, somebody had taken off the food and supplies. Remember all those barrels of food with the beans and the rice and the fish and all the repair stuff? You remember how they had taken, let's see if I can show you the picture, how he had prepared for his voyage, all the things. I bet you guys are better at remembering some of the things oh, yep, I think it's right here. Ah, yes. There was 1,512 pounds of honey, 3,200 pounds of raisins, 21,000 pounds of biscuits, 4,700 pounds of olive oil, right? So you remember how we talked about how much they had prepared for their voyage. They were going to be gone for 2 years. So Ferdinand's now realizing all the way down here, it's now April, that half his food and supplies are missing. They had been taken off the ships even before Ferdinand's expedition had left Spain. Who was responsible? The King of Portugal, Ferdinand's longtime enemy. And that's the king that when Ferdinand went to kiss his hand, the king pulled his hand away. So this is the not very nice King of Portugal. All right, so let's get to right here. In August, it finally grew warm enough to leave. We shall search for El Paso until we find it, Ferdinand announced to the crew. But only 4 ships left the harbor on August 24th. The 5th, the Santiago, had gone down in a storm a few weeks before. A strong wind blew the Trinidad, the Victoria, the Conception, and the San Antonio out to sea. As Ferdinand and the crewmen sailed away, Cartagena stood on shore. He was never heard from again. Maybe he made friends with the penguins. Okay, so today we read a little bit more of Ferdinand. We will jump back in at a later time. All right, I'll see you guys later.